institutions don't want innovation and entrepreneurship from happening. They actively work against you. I know that this is really interesting. The only thing I could speak of is my experience of building the Reciprocity Project within academia, within PhD life. And it's really fascinating for me the amount, and the reason why I was thinking about this is that there's this often tremendous amount of discussion that we need more technology, more innovation, more entrepreneurship within the PhD world, within academia, within doing research. There's often talk about sort of knowledge translation. There's talk about, commercialization, and it fascinates me when you actually go to do this, what will happen is, and I've been trying to build the reciprocity platform for 10 years now. What will happen, and it works. It's a great product. I get my students, when I ask them, they're using it. I'm forcing my students to use all of my students to use it. And when they actually use it, they're like, oh my gosh, why doesn't nobody know about this thing? It's absolutely amazing, right? I asked them, does this add value to your life? And absolutely everybody put up their hand. So, I know it's not because of the value prop. I know it's not because of the information. I put in a tremendous amount, like 6,000 different YouTube videos and all sorts of different posts. It's just that the institutions that that talk about this, they actually don't want it, right? Like, I think that is the key thing. They don't want the change. And this is why you see, so one of the things that was interesting is I thought I would be the one. So hang with me here before you lose me. I thought I would be the one, I looked around when began this. I was like, why isn't anybody doing any sort of innovation entrepreneurship? And I thought, like, hey, if I do this, then everybody would love me. Um, like I would have greater chances of mobility. It'd just be hunky dory and wonderful and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I go and do it and I realize that there's, it's crickets. It's not like people are actively, hating. There are some people that will actually happen, right? Like that does happen. It's happened to me. There'll be people that will actually hate on you. But it's just crickets, right? And that's the key thing, is that you're not going to get, support and all that kind of stuff for any of these kind of activities. And when you go and you try to, do the whole, tenure thing, right? Which is very real. That means that we can't stay in the institutions that we're at, or, you know, going to another place, you have to be tenured. Another universities, they'll look at me and they'll say, well, you don't have enough publications. Well, why don't I have enough publications? It's because this takes an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of money to actually do. And they'll just simply say, well, tough luck. Um, so on one hand, I know you're listening to this and you think that I am just an old fart, right? Like, he's just an old fart that's cranky. Um, And that's the somewhat of the problem of this, right? Like, it breeds this, um, if you go and do it and it doesn't succeed for you, that's the institution actually working, right? And if it doesn't work for you and you work at it for a long time and you sort of tell people, it gets you to believe, or, the whole institution, the culture gets you to believe that, that this is a one-off thing and that person is just cranky and old and crusty and doesn't know what they're actually talking about. And the reason why, there was some people, right? Like, I saw some people that probably would have been very pessimistic at the time and was like, I don't know. Um, Right, and they've done it, they've seen it, they've been there, and of course, me being foolish and stupid and all that kind of stuff, being young, naive, you kind of jump into things and not knowing so much. So that's one thing. The culture kind of gets you. The institutional culture often gets you, and I'm not just talking about my institution. That's like not my university. It's across the board, right? Like they'll just the the response is, that person is just crazy. They don't know what they're talking about, or they're completely unsuccessful. Yada yada yada, right? Like that's what happens. And then on the other hand, there's often, you know, how it actually happens. I do not believe in entrepreneurship anymore in the way that I used to believe, in kind of a naive way. What often happens, or innovation, right? The success of innovation. What happens is that there's often invisible forces that are behind the scenes. So if you see successful and you see success, right? Like on the face value of it, you don't realize that there's a lot of invisible forces that are behind the scenes that is very difficult to pick up on until you're actually in the experience. And so what do I mean? It's not the cabal, right? It's not that kind of stuff. But what it is just that there's personal connections that are often invisible, that lead to sort of successful outcomes. There's often being just in a certain position at a certain place, it leads to successful outcomes, right? Like there is just things that you don't see and that you're not privy to at the time. And it's very difficult to. So even the people that are in those positions that are more privileged don't see it either, because they haven't taken, like, the bird's eye view, and they're not going to recognize it as would, somebody that has taken a bird's eye view. And there's all sorts of great research now that is emerging on the science of science that sort of shows this. And the bird's eye view is there. They, look at millions and millions of observations to sort of show this stuff. Observations of data, like millions of it. Like I'm not like lying with that. And you see these effects. So what I am getting at here is that even though institutions really, really, speak, there is a rhetoric, right? And I love this term. So one of my advisors who I speak very highly of, um, there is the rhetoric of what's actually happening and what people talk about, and then there's the reality of it, right? There's actually what people really want, what actually moves the needle, what ticks, right? So if you want rapid adoption of something, you need to have that, um, the personal connections, all those kind of things that matters, right? Like the network matters. But the other thing is that choosing something that it's often addictions, right? Like if you want rapid adoption of something, it's gotta be, and that's what people often don't want. But the truth is if you look at what actually does spread, it's often, very much addicting type things, whether, it makes people feel really, really good, right? Certain kinds of medicines, um, whether it's like coffee or chocolate or, these kind of things that are, particularly outstanding, those spread, those actually get adopted more easier than, spreading generic innovation, generic technology that you may want to actually work on. Um, so, what's the takeaway with this? I think the takeaway is, if you are in the process, right, you're actually building something, you're doing something, and it's not clicking as fast as what you thought it would, don't take a step back and say, I failed, right? Like, I'm a student of failure. I understand this. Don't take a step back and say, I failed, I'm a screw up, and all that kind of stuff. Just realize you are just very, and I'm not saying that this in a bad way. You are just either ignorant or naive. I'm not saying in the bad way of like, oh, there's taint. I'm saying is you just didn't know, right? Like you just didn't know the full extent. You didn't have the information, so there's this famous, um, In my stream is very famous. Some people may have a different perspective, but Herbert Simon has this great line. I just ended up reading one of his articles, that one of his original articles over again. I think I read it in graduate school. Simon, 1955. There was a PhD student that was talking about it, and I was like, oh, I got to read that again. And there's this line, a little description about, things are not kind of working out for you. That doesn't mean that what you did was completely irrational and it was completely problematic. It's just that you didn't know. And that's the point of it, is you would never know until you actually get into it and understand the world of what it actually is. So yes, go be fooled by innovation and entrepreneurship, but just realize the world is very complicated. And there's a lot of things that you're just not privy to see. And it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault, right? It's not the world's fault or anything like that. You're just not privy to it. And the people that are participating in it is often not privy to that information too. So just know, as you go about and do things, like, don't don't give up. There's no real good way to know what you should actually do. And I wish that there was, but don't give up. You might be too early, but at the same time, you might be too late, right? You might be and it might be too difficult. You just don't know. So reframe the conversation in your head, reframe it so that you're getting enjoyment out of it, and you're looking at as like, this is a goofy thing, and all of a sudden your experiences will be completely different. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.